Key challenge for the UN is figuring out how these very different economies can make drastic cuts in carbon emissions. Our Dan Collyns joins us now live from Lima. He's been at the conference. Dan, good to see you. How can all of these countries get on the same page?
Michelle, it's very much about leading by example, and that's what the two biggest emitters have done, China and the US, in making a historic pledge to cut greenhouse gases last month. That included moving towards renewable energy. China, in fact, pledged that it would change its energy matrix so that clean energy made up around 20% of it by 2030. The US is also making similar commitments. And the UN's top climate chief here, Christiana Figueres, said that making the shift towards clean energy could actually make good business sense.
We're seeing more and more the realization that investment in fossil fuel is actually a high risk, is getting more and more risky, because both the exploration and the exploitation of oil is getting more and more expensive, whereas, contrasting with that, the technologies in renewable energies are getting actually cheaper and cheaper and increasing in their efficiency. So we do have, just from a financial and business perspective, a stronger case every day for renewables and a weaker case every time for fossils.
So making the shift towards clean energy may make good financial sense. The challenge is persuading developing nations to make that shift and helping them as well to move, take advantage of the potential they have in sun and wind to make that shift in their energy matrices without affecting their economies, which is their main concern at this stage. I found out how one developing nation, Peru, the host nation, is making inroads with clean energy.
Wind. It's about as renewable as energy comes. And here on the Peruvian coast, 500 kilometers south of Lima, it hardly ever stops blowing. Spanish company Cobra is harvesting that energy at Peru's first wind farm with 11 turbines. Generating 32 megawatts per hour, it's enough to supply 30,000 households.
We don't consume petrol or gas. We don't use any depletable resource. Our raw material is the wind, which is inexhaustible, so we generate energy without creating any waste.
It's a tiny fraction of the energy supplied to Peru's national grid, but it's a start. Wind power already supplies a third of Spain's energy demands, and the company sees great potential in Peru.
Why here? The answer is obvious, as I'm almost being blown away. We've measured the wind here, and it blows at 10 meters per second for 4,400 hours a year.
It's also viewed by many as a safe investment, thanks to tax breaks for clean energy.
New clean energy incentives for companies mean that investors are queuing up to get into the renewable energy business here in Latin America. This emerging market is giving a whole new value to barren, windy places like this.
Energy demand in Latin America is expected to double in the next decade, and Peru is no exception. But with abundant hydroelectric power and ample gas fields, Peru is slow to embrace new sources of energy.
At the moment, renewable energy represents between 3.5 and 4% of the country's energy mix. Our idea is to increase this to 5% by the end of this decade.
As costs for clean energy alternatives come down, the World Wildlife Fund says the region has tremendous potential.
Renewable energy is not only good for environmental reasons, it's not only good because of climate change. Renewable energy is absolutely good because of the co-benefits. And when we're talking about energy security, we're not only talking about sufficiency of resources, because renewable energy empowers the nations to be self-sufficient.
At a time when reducing fossil fuels emissions has a new urgency, Latin America could become a world leader in clean energy.
All right, Dan, so clearly we can see tremendous progress being made in Peru, and Latin America looks to be a new energy frontier. But Dan, what are other nations doing to move away from polluting energy sources?
Well, just today, China's delegate Su Wei has reiterated China's pledge to cut or cap emissions by 2030, and it said that that would be part of a 10-year plan starting from 2020. Yesterday, Germany said that it would cut emissions by 30 million tons by moving away from coal-fired power stations and investing heavily into renewable energy. So positive signs there, or how some nations are making the moves, but the UN says that much more still needs to be done, not only to drastically cut carbon emissions, but also to help developing nations to adapt to climate change and to mitigate climate change. They say that current estimates of billions of dollars needed a year would probably need to be tripled, according to a report out today. However, it's worth saying that the mood music here, I'm told by delegates, it is good. There's a positive atmosphere here, delegates tell me, especially compared with the UN Climate Summit last year in Warsaw, which was basically derailed after civil society groups walked out. The real work of this summit will start next week with the high-level negotiations, where negotiators will be working towards a draft text which will be taken to Paris next year to be hopefully finalized and signed as part of a global binding climate change deal.
Dan, we know you'll be following the progress of those negotiations very closely for us. We'll be checking in with you again. Dan Collyns at the UN climate change talks in Peru. Thank you so much.